I'm Konstantin. I'm the CEO and founder of Blockdaemon. We're the largest crypto infrastructure provider in the world. We power around 20% of global institutional crypto transactions. So we run a lot of core infrastructure and software to help institutions connect to blockchains. And I was asked to talk a little bit about the sort of factors that helped us succeed over time. We're now a little over 4.5 years old. And and so I wanted to talk about 5 things, really, that helped me a lot, that I think most people don't talk a lot about, which is the first is that I think as a founder, we heard some of this, I think, at the end of this. I listened to the last couple of minutes, is to kind of hack your own brain chemistry. You have to become a believer in something that everyone else will initially tell you isn't a good idea. And so it requires a degree of stupidity, because normally when you're intelligent and logical, you do your market research, you talk to people, and ideally, you come to a conclusion based on the feedback you receive. And I think as a founder, you need to make the wrong conclusion ultimately, right? Like at the moment in time, you need to believe in something that no one else sees if you want to create, a multi-billion-dollar opportunity, for example, out of thin air. And so I think the way I achieved it was by being singularly committed to the vision, which meant there's an American expression called burning the boat, which meant that I was the first seed investor in the company. I got other people to invest that I really liked in the business. I created a scenario where quitting the business was not really a reliable option for me. And so I kind of engineered the business in a way where I was just never really able to walk away from it very, very easily. And that was very important, because when I started the company, and a lot of founders have the same story, I think I got 110 no's from investors initially. And so the second important point is you got to really be very ruthless with yourself and not ruthless to the people you work with. And so one of the things that I've always tried to do with my team members is, in order to make our vision succeed, I knew I had to go the extra mile. I wasn't able to have a lot of, sort of work-life balance. I had to make a lot of sacrifices. And it's very easy to demand the same thing from everyone else who works with you, but nobody is as incentivized as you are. And so I think being generous as a founder is really interesting. The only problem is you can't be generous with yourself, right? And so it's an interesting sort of dichotomy you have to grapple with, and that I think is a really important indicator of a quality founder. The third big thing is learning how to build optionality trees. When you build product, and the way I define deep tech here is really technology where a successful roadmap is multiple years out, right? So every time you build technology in a world where there isn't a directly competing workflow already, right? Like when you solve something where it's like, okay, there's 18 steps. Currently, we're going to build a product that needs 12 steps. That's relatively straightforward on the iteration side. It's much, much harder when you build technology in a category that doesn't yet exist, right? You have nothing to copy. And so what you have to do is kind of do what normally most VCs recommend you don't do, which is you can't be too focused early on. You need to have multiple different parallel optionality trees and product strategies in order to test for product market fit and iterate your way forward. And then that gets challenging when you look at the fourth point, which I'm making, is that I don't think that's also really good not to raise too much money very early. Back in the day when I started, that was always the case. Nowadays, I have a lot of friends who raise seed money. They raise like a pre-seed 10 million or something, and it kind of sort of sets them up with 5 people to work for 5 years on a problem. And what that tends to do to companies is that it prevents them from pruning their optionality trees, right? Like they're never forced to really fully give up on something because they don't have to present some form of product market fit or traction quickly enough. And so I think it's super important to, a lot of leverage and risk early on is very, very important, because it forces you to try 3-4 things within the first 12 months of your company, and then you have to go out and raise money again. And the only way you're going to raise money again is if you have something to show for it. And so there's a real degree of ruthlessness and ability to have multiple different parallel strategies that you then can converse really quickly into one. And then the second you have traction, you got to start having the fifth thing, which is you got to get very lucky. I think the other thing that's always fun when you build startup companies, for me, the most fun experience was like the trajectory of me being seen as someone who really is crazy when you start and you pitch a lot of different investors. And then 5 years later, suddenly you have a multi-billion-dollar company, investors make a lot of money. Suddenly everybody wants me to give a talk like this, right? Which is like, hey, what's the wisdom? What can you share? And it's very easy to kind of come up with like some pattern recognition framework that says, hey, I'm just doing this stuff and this is the way to success, without acknowledging how much luck plays and timing ultimately plays a part in it. And I think that's fascinating. And all you can really do, and why I love talking about optionality trees, is you need to give yourself enough time to get lucky, right? And so, and that's where the resilience part is really, really important, which is ultimately, there's another, I love bioscience, for example, and so there's an interesting statistic that, if you live long enough, you develop cancer. So this is the inverse of what I'm saying, is if you live long enough, you could be lucky enough to create a billion-dollar company. It's purely a mechanism of odds, ultimately, over time. And so I think learning how to get lucky is really, really important. And as a founder, you get lucky if you're alive early on. And so not giving up is very important. And people here talk about the resilience and thick skin, and all that stuff is very important, but it only works if you're also, I think, a high risk taker. Because the other thing that I tell people I work with, and sometimes when I make investments in founders too, is that I do want them to fail fast, which is important to walk away from your stupidity, right? Like, because I started with, you have to be a little stupid as a founder to start something that, against all odds, everybody who's intelligent tells you it makes no sense. And so it's easy, if you're able to convince yourself of that illusion, it's easy to commit too much to it, right? So you need external factors to stop you. You need to run out of money and fail because you're not willingly going to give up. But nothing is sadder than a founder that spent 10 years keeping a company alive with like just enough money to kind of make it over a really, really long period of time. And so it's just a lot of wasted talent, right? And so, yeah, and so I kind of, that's kind of how we did it, building really complicated technology for institutions at scale. Yeah, I always, when I talk to my investors now, and I get to talk to them about how we got here, I think it's a mixture of stupidity and resilience. So, if you guys are into investing, you want to look at maybe the not so smart people who are really, really dedicated, and you want to tee them up so they fail fast. And then you can pick up the sort of remaining survivors, and they might have a really good chance to build a large company. But we're here. Blockdaemon has an office. We expanded into Asia. We have an office here in Singapore. If you're interested in running complex infrastructure and connecting institutions to crypto, come talk to us. We have a booth here. There's folks with T-shirts with our logo on it. We're always happy to talk to anyone who believes like us in bringing on the next financial revolution by onboarding the world onto crypto rails. I'm going to give you a minute back here. And yeah, hit me up if you guys have any questions after. It's been fun to talk to you guys. Thank you.